On today's show, I am joined by Locked On Kings host Matt George, who said that the Clippers were going to be the worst team in the Pacific Division when we got James Harden. Does he still believe we're going to be the worst team in the Pacific Division this year? We will be previewing the Pacific on today's Locked On Clippers, Locked On Kings crossover. Woo!
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Pacific Division preview with the Sacramento Kings and Los Angeles Clippers. Matt George from Locked On Kings, Dime Dropper from Locked On Clips. We're coming together to talk about where these two teams are at in the Pacific, and more specifically, maybe even in the Western Conference, and just how crazy this conference is. Dime, there are going to be a number of your listeners that maybe aren't too happy to hear from me, because what they might remember of me from last year is the take and the belief that the Clippers were going to be the worst team in the Pacific Division. Turns out I was dead wrong about that, right? Couldn't have been more wrong. However, that now seems like more of a consensus amongst everybody for this year based off of what happened this offseason. So I'm not going to be the one to put it out into the universe, but it seems like a lot of the universe believes that if we're talking about the division, not that the division matters that much, but these five teams in the West that all are trying to get a playoff spot, and all five might end up with a playoff spot with just the way the West is going. It seems like the Clippers are expected to struggle the most out of all these five teams. Do you think that's a fair assessment, or do you think the the Clippers are being underestimated simply because of the departure of Paul George?
Definitely feel like they're being underestimated, even though I'm not super high on the team in the sense that I don't believe they're a championship team, a championship contender without Paul George. So that's where people might say I'm negative about it. But in the context of this conversation, who's the worst team in the Pacific, I do not see. I mean, it could happen based on injuries, but the Warriors are better than the Clippers. I disagree. Like, they have no second star. Their defense is kind of suspect, whereas the Clippers added a bunch of defenders around James Harden and Kawhi, with Derek Jones Jr. coming in and Nico Batum and Chris Dunn. I don't see the Warriors being a better team than the Clippers unless Kawhi Leonard or James Harden miss significant time. I truly believe they are the worst team in the Pacific, and it's a pretty clear-cut thing this season. They've done almost nothing to improve. They brought in Kyle Anderson, who I love actually because he went to UCLA, but Kyle Anderson, and who else am I forgetting that they brought
Buddy
in?
Hield. Buddy Hield. Kings legend.
Right, and losing Klay Thompson,
yeah,
that doesn't – and they're all getting a year older. It doesn't make me very confident that they're going to be a very solid team this year.
I got the sense when Paul George left, I got the sense from you and listening to your podcast a little bit and listening to the stuff you put up on Twitter that there was almost a relief to it. It's like, okay, you know what? It's over. The saga's over. We can kind of move on. And look, the fact that there's still James Harden here, Kawhi Leonard still here, the Clippers are still a good team. It's not like they're going into full on tank mode. But was there a relief that the Paul George kind of circumstances or sweepstakes or whatever the case is over? Do you think, not that the Clippers will be better because Paul is no longer here, but the fact that maybe the distraction is gone, or they can focus in on who they do have, do you think that has a chance to make this team look better than how they played last season?
Not quite, honestly. I wasn't stressed out about the Paul situation. I think it was more so that Clipper fans aren't too bothered by seeing him leave, because he disappointed us too frequently. But the fact of the matter is the Clippers aren't as good of a team without Paul George to me. Some of the people in my Locked On Clippers comment section disagree because they are so anti-Paul George at this point. But 23, 6, and 4 on great splits just don't grow on trees.
Right.
That's the facts of the matter. So I wouldn't say I'm relieved, especially because the biggest question mark in the whole room is still there. And that's every single episode I do, Matt. It's kind of it's somewhat frustrating. I even had a comment complaining about it, saying this if with Kawhi, how long do you want to do this? It's like, what choice do I have? Like, as a host of the show, every conversation I have about my favorite team is if Kawhi's healthy, we can do this. If Kawhi's not healthy, like, it's just so I can't say that there's this stress that's been removed. I'm still very not sold on the whole thing because one injury to Kawhi, and that's it. We're done. We're not a playoff team. We might not even be a play-in team. So it's still, kind of on pins and needles about the Kawhi health stuff.
It's interesting and maybe even a little bit hypocritical the way we look at the Clippers compared to the way that we look at the Phoenix Suns, because the same thing can be said about Phoenix. They got 75 games out of Kevin Durant last season. Is that going to happen again? Like, Devin Booker has been dealing with nagging injuries as well. Bradley Beal, at this point, everybody expects Bradley Beal to miss the majority of the season. So the Phoenix Suns maybe are a little more equipped to survive an injury to one of their guys than the Clippers are to survive Kawhi Leonard. But the vast majority of people think, yeah, the Pacific is Phoenix's division. Like, if Phoenix stays healthy, they should run away with the division and they should be a team that's competing for a championship. But then the same question is, but when you ask them about the Clippers, it's, oh, well, they need Kawhi to stay healthy or they have no chance. So it's interesting how both teams are looked at differently in the Pacific.
Yeah, I'm actually interested that you said the Suns are viewed as the consensus favorite because they gained Mason Plumlee, lost Drew Eubanks. They did get Tyus Jones. That's a really solid addition. And I think Monty Morris as well, right?
Yeah, yes.
So it's an upgrade, but to me, that's not enough for me to say, okay, they're definitely winning a series this year. The Lakers are an interesting one because they didn't really improve much. They got JJ Redick as their coach now.
Right.
But Anthony Davis and LeBron are still very good. If Jared Vanderbilt can be healthier this year, that can really help them as well in terms of size defensively and put less onus on LeBron defensively. But I don't truly see the Suns as that much better than the Lakers. I mean, the Lakers last year were 7th seed. Phoenix was the 6th seed, right? Yeah, played against the Timberwolves in the first round. So they weren't separated by much. I think that's an interesting one. My point is, I don't see Phoenix as a consensus winner. I would honestly give the Kings a chance to finish the better regular season record, if I'm being honest. I think it's very up for grabs. I can just tell you this. I can promise you the Warriors won't win the division in the regular season. I think the other teams actually have a chance because let's say even though I predict that the Kings will have a better record than the Clippers in the regular season, especially just based on De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis, I just feel as though are more of a guarantee to play more games than Kawhi and James. And then you also have Keegan Murray. You have some youth on the team that we don't really quite have. I think the Clippers, Kings, Suns, and Lakers all have a chance to win the Pacific, honestly. Because if Kawhi and James play over 60-plus games, the team is really not that bad. Like, we have the chance to be a great defensive team, top 10 in the league, maybe even top 5 in the league with the amount of defensive wings that we now have. That's the part that most Clipper fans are excited. But as I said, it's all on the health. But I'm not super high on Phoenix, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is where a lot of these conversations that I've done with the other hosts in the Pacific and really just hosts around the Western Conference is that a couple of years ago, I felt that the Pacific Division was the best division in basketball. I just felt like, man, every single and the same can be kind of argued again this year. It's just the top is not as solidified, but there's a world where all 5 of these teams could be in the postseason, including the play-in tournament to some extent. And I don't think anybody would be overly surprised by it. That being said, there's no Minnesota in this division. There's no OKC in this division. That's why I think a lot of people think, okay, Phoenix has the best chance to represent the Pacific on the Western Conference Finals or NBA Finals stage. But the division itself just feels wide open. Again, the division standings doesn't really matter. The NBA has made it so that divisions really don't matter other than the fact that you're playing each team 4 times, 2 at home and 2 on the way. But I think it's just really interesting how competitive but tight and wide open this division is, to where you win this division, you should be a solidified playoff team in the West. And we know how difficult that's going to be this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, OKC, Minnesota, they're pretty much locks. You didn't even mention Denver and Dallas. So I would put them as locks to make the playoffs. Dallas, regardless of what people think, will they be able to go back to the finals? They're going to make the playoffs. I would bet a lot of money on that. So the odds, based on those teams we named, of every team making the playoffs from the Pacific alongside them, I don't think they're very high. I think you're going to get at least one or two of them that make the play-in but miss the playoffs. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. That's right. NFL Sunday Ticket free trial as the season is upon us this upcoming weekend. My Rams are in action against the Detroit Lions, but you can bet on any game, not necessarily the Rams or the Chargers, on FanDuel. The line for the opening game is -3 for Kansas City. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sports book.
The regular season, too, I think matters a heck of a lot to the Sacramento Kings, Dime, in the sense that, we're in a period now where every single Western Conference game could have massive implications because you finish 1 or 2 games or 1 or 2 wins fewer than another team. That could be the difference of 2-3 spots in the standings, just with how we expect the Western Conference to be. I think the regular season matters a lot to a team like Sacramento because even if they end up being the best team in the Pacific, this team needs the experience of growing together, and I think they need playoff seeding maybe more than a Phoenix or maybe even a Los Angeles Clippers do. If you look at the Clippers, is it fair or is it okay to look at the Clippers in the sense that, hey, just get there, just get to the postseason, and then you have enough talent to put together a run? Or does where they finish in seeding and standings and things, do you think that matters more than, hey, just get there in some capacity?
It's honestly a really good question because the last 2 years we've really debated this point. In 2023, the mentality was just get there. And that's the season where Kings even finished higher than the Clippers. Just get there. And it was poor. We built no good regular season habits, constantly in and out of the lineup were Kawhi and Paul George. We got Russell Westbrook as like a panic move late in the season. So it was really about just getting there, and it didn't work because Paul George was injured late in the season anyways, and Kawhi Leonard was injured in the playoffs anyways. So it's like we might as well just go hard and do the best we can. If someone gets injured, someone gets injured. And that's kind of what happened. But the saddest part is Kawhi didn't necessarily get injured. It was knee inflammation. So like not a specific moment where he got hurt. It was like the wear and tear, which makes you think like, what can the Clippers do with this guy? Do they have to manage him, or else he's got no chance to play? When they play him full speed full throttle, while he might be an all NBA type player, is he going to have the juice to go in the playoffs? So I think this season, Matt, you're going to see the Clippers go back to let's just get there as long as Kawhi Leonard is healthy. No one else. As long as Kawhi Leonard is healthy, we will take our chances because, fun fact for any Kings fans listening, Kawhi Leonard in his 5 years as a Clipper, and obviously this has to do with COVID as well, has only played 1 game with a sold-out playoff crowd in front of Clipper fans, and he wasn't even fully healthy. That was game 2 against Dallas this year. He's never given us a signature playoff moment in front of us, and he's been on the team for 5 years. So that tells you a lot. At this point, the organization just wants playoff Kawhi to show himself again, and we haven't seen that since 2021, right before he tore his ACL.
Is resting him and holding him out specific games for rest and making sure that he doesn't play over a certain amount of games, is that really helping him? I get the concept on paper. It's like, okay, don't play every single night. Be as rested as possible. We'll try and limit the chance that you have or the risk of injury. And then he gets to the postseason and it's basketball. Just something happens. You step on somebody's foot. You whatever. Just things can happen. So is it really worth it for the Clippers, you think, to continue to pursue kind of what Kawhi's been known for now, which is the rest night and holding him to a certain amount of games and trying to limit the injuries as much as possible? Or is it just, hey, man, if you can go play And if something happens, we'll try and figure it out when it comes.
I personally am not a fan of the load management stuff because I haven't, as you said, it hasn't really proven to like work in this sense because you're playing high level professional sports. An injury can happen at any time. Of course, if you put more, stress on that particular whatever it is, tendon, muscle injury, yes, it could get worse. But a lot of times we're talking about a guy who is a little banged up, as every NBA player is throughout the course of a season, and it's like, we need to prioritize winning games and seeding, but I truly don't know, Matt. I think Kawhi is such an enigma when it comes to health. I know that he has a knee condition, so I think he's the one exception where I don't mind if he load manages. But here's the thing, and the facts. I don't think the Clippers can win a championship with load management strategy because to me, and I'm big on this, and my listeners know, there's only 2 teams in the history of basketball that have won the championship as a lower than a 4 seed. I'm sorry, a lower than a 3 seed. The 69 Celtics and the 95 Rockets. They were both defending champions. So seeding does matter. And then people throw counter arguments at me like, well, the Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat just made the finals as lower seeds. And the key phrase there is you're talking about made the finals.
Yeah, they lost.
And I believe there's a big difference between making it and then getting smoked like Dallas did. That series wasn't close. The Denver Nuggets Miami Heat series wasn't really close.
Right.
And so winning the championship, the Nets made 2 straight finals in the early 2000s. They weren't a championship team. They weren't even close to a championship team. So there is a level that you have to reach. And to me, the seeding does matter. It's a representation of what you've done and the chemistry you've built throughout the course of a season. And the Clippers will not get a top 3 seed with Kawhi load managing, which therefore means to me, the best they can do is make a deep playoff run if Kawhi's healthy, but not win the whole thing.
The Kings took a page out of every other team in the Pacific's playbook because they were the young guns, right? Even with Fox and Sabonis aren't that young, but they were the younger core compared to the rest of the division. So they went out and got a 34, now soon to be 35-year-old star or former star in DeMar DeRozan. I love the move. I'm excited about the move. Dime, I don't know if you realize it or not. He's the biggest name that Sacramento has ever been able to attract in free agency. The last one was Vlade Divac. That's how big of an acquisition this is. That being said, DeMar's not coming in here to Sacramento to be the guy. He's coming in here to fit with Fox and Sabonis and Keegan and Malik Monk. What was your perspective and your opinion on that kind of addition? And did it change your perspective at all of the Kings and their ability to actually make some noise? Because ultimately the Kings are trying to build themselves into a contender. I don't think anybody, myself included, feels confident going, yeah, the Kings are ready to contend for a championship right now. What I believe this season needs to be about is get this team to a position to where you feel confident saying, I'm ready to go all in. Because the Kings still have draft picks. They still have assets to trade. But they don't want to trade all those picks and assets and go all in with a group that maybe, possibly, if everything goes right, could compete. No, they want to know that they have a shot at the title before going all in for it. That's what I think the season is about. So what was your perspective on the DeMar DeRozan addition?
I think it's a good move. The Sacramento Kings could definitely use some half-court scoring, I think, when the game slows down. You guys have played a very fast pace the last couple of seasons. I don't know about last season's numbers, but weren't you one of the top teams in the league in pace the 2023 season?
Correct. Yes. And last season, it definitely took it. Offense across the board took a dip last season with the Kings' focus on the defensive end.
Okay. So then bringing in DeRozan is good. You get a guy who can score in slightly different ways than Fox and Sabonis, mid-range, catching on the wing, mid-post, that kind of deal. So you have a legitimate big 3, so to speak now, which I think is a very solid dynamic. And I think my first thought was, yeah, I wouldn't put the Kings in a championship discussion because of DeRozan, but I would say you got a chance to win a series now, which the Sacramento Kings haven't done since 2005?
Yeah, been a while.
Yeah. So this is a big deal in my opinion, especially with the maturation that we've seen from Keegan Murray defensively. I mean, I noticed it last year. I could see it. And that is big for me. And then Keon Ellis kind of showed himself a bit last season defensively. Whose spot did he take? Kevin Huerter's spot in the starting lineup that he took?
Correct. And that's up for grabs still, too. We don't know if Kevin's going to get it back or if Keon's going to keep it or even Malik. I think Malik should start, but we'll see what the Kings do there.
The question is, I mean, with DeRozan, Monk, Fox, Sabonis, do you want another better defender? Because that feels like Keegan Murray is tasked with a lot there. But I think DeRozan will absolutely help. the best thing as far as the DeRozan addition is concerned is that, as you said, this is the first time in DeMar's entire career since he became a star caliber player in the league where he's not the number one scorer, really. And I thought he came to Chicago to be like a 1A, 1B, but I think kind of the alpha in DeRozan and the natural deferring of LaVine mixed with the injuries that LaVine had made DeRozan the number one.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who's averaged 24 plus points the last 3 seasons. Now he's essentially the third option or the second scoring option. And I think this is going to be very good for him because maybe now with less pressure on him, he can shed some of the playoff, choker labels and whatnot, DeFrozen or whatever, and get a series win. And that would be huge for a Sacramento Kings franchise. DeRozan would be viewed as a legend for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something earlier that I wanted to revisit because I think it's the area out of the division where the Clippers could have the biggest edge. You brought up the defense, and I think a lot of people would think, oh no, the Lakers have the chance to be the best defensive team. When the Lakers are in a close game that matters, you'll see AD and LeBron buckle down defensively. But the majority of the season, the vast majority of the season, they're not buckling down and locking in on the defensive end. The Sacramento Kings like to be better defensively. No matter how good Keegan Murray and Keon Ellis are, that is an offensively driven roster. The Warriors are the Warriors. The Suns are the Suns. The Suns can play a little bit of defense too, but again, we're talking about like big time moments. So the opportunity for the Clippers to make a name for themselves in this division and frustrate 4 offensively driven teams, I think is there. How far do you think that can take the Clippers, though? You got Kawhi, you've got James Harden to be your stars and facilitate the scoring. But if the rest of the team buckles down and the Clippers are, let's say, a top 10 defensive team, is that possible, number one? And number two, how far do you think that takes them?
They should be a top 10 defensive team. Like that should be the bare minimum. I talked about it on yesterday's episode. If they're top 5, now we're really cooking with gas. But top 10 is a bare minimum. I think just being a good defensive team just raises your floor. It keeps you in games. And if you look at the Clippers roster, Kawhi Leonard and James Harden are really the only elite shot creators on the entire team. After that, you're talking about KPJ. Is he even going to get minutes? Like, what's his situation? So, and Norman Powell, he's more of a guy that feeds off others and will like attack closeouts and stuff like that. He's not a guy that you give the ball to and say, go get a bucket. Even though he is a bucket, he's not like a self-creating bucket. The third option should be, and Clipper fans have been crying for this, a lot of us, Zubats. Throwing him the ball and using him like an old school big that you dump it down to in the post, because he's actually a solid post-up player. I know you guys dump it down to Sabonis here and there, and Zubats' post game is not as good as Sabonis, but he's got a great right-hand jump hook. He's even improved his left hand over the last 2 seasons. So if they can empower him, that might help our offensive struggles. But yeah, our defense, it has a chance to be great. The fact that last season it was really just Terrence Mann as the only point of attack defender outside of the stars was concerning. Now you have Derek Jones Jr., Nicholas Batum, who just had such a good Olympics with France. He seems like he's not aging at all. And then Chris Dunn, who you brought in as a solid point of attack defender. Now, I mentioned all those guys. I didn't even mention Terrence Mann or Kawhi Leonard. And if it's Zubats is behind them, blocking shots. So the defense is the route to make the Clippers a solid team, but the offense will be too putrid without one of Kawhi or James Harden. So like if Kawhi load manages, it's gonna be hard to win games. It's essentially gonna be James Harden ball, where it's high pick and roll, dribble, but you might still get a great shot every time down type of deal. But it's I mean, I don't know about relying on that 35-year-old James ISO and pick and roll all game in 2024, 25.
I am the biggest Domantas Sabonis homer on the planet. Self-admitted. I don't even care because I think the man gets flack for nonsensical reasons around the league from casuals who have no idea what they're talking about. That being said, a number of times last season, I watched Domantas Sabonis struggle to figure out what to do with Zubats. Straight up struggle. Just how to get him off the block. Now, Sabonis typically out-rebounded him, which is, he was the rebound champion, so you got that. But Zubats' presence on both offense and defense, I remember as, like, Sabonis makes AD look like a child. Like, he has no problem going against AD. He has no problem going against some of these kind of longer, lengthier bigs that he's technically undersized with because he's not as tall, but he's big and physical and he can push them off the block. Zubats ain't moving. Zubats doesn't go anywhere, and Sabonis is as physical as it gets. So I like what you said about Zubats, and I like the extension that they gave him and everything. Zubats is a good player, so it makes sense to me that Clipper Nation is kind of calling for it a little bit more, because we have an issue in Sacramento here as well, where we're kind of screaming at Sabonis to score more and shoot more, because his first instinct is to get his teammates involved. Is it the same thing in LA? Like, Zubats, just score the basketball, my guy. Or are the Clippers just not giving him the ball?
Yeah, that's mainly it. We don't really get mad at Zoo as opposed to, I see what you guys mean with Sabonis, because I feel the same way watching him. But no, Zoo, it's almost all it's the coaching staff and the players that we blame for not giving him the ball, because they'll literally look him off. He'll be asking for the ball in the post and they will just go another direction. It's like, it's very frustrating. We've been saying it for a couple of seasons now. So I hope that him being the longest tenured Clipper and being given this extension will give the coaching staff the trust to feed him the ball more.
All right. Should we wrap this up by, we can do it united as the Clippers and Kings, Locked On Clippers, Locked On Kings. And we can, so not one of us is getting dragged in social media comments by their fan base. Should we both declare together that the Golden State Warriors are going to be the worst team in the Pacific Division? Because I'm kind of vibing with it. I'm vibing with it.
I think we should. I'm I love Steph Curry, but
yep.
It's just, I don't think the Warriors fans are very confident about their team.
I think they're overconfident with their rotational pieces. Like, I get Jonathan Kuminga believing he can take a jump. How much better is Moses Moody going to get? I'm trying to tell Warriors fans what they've got in Buddy Hield. He's going to have a couple big games and big moments where he shoots the you-know-what out of the ball and has some awesome, just some awesome games where he explodes. He's also going to have games where he takes more threes than Steph, and the camera's going to pan over to Steph's face, and he's going to be looking at him like, what the hell are you doing? So, and even more than the Kawhi Leonard injury, the Warriors lose Steph, and I'm not rooting for this to happen, because Steph was unbelievable in the Olympics. And as much as he's destroyed the Kings in his entire career, I love watching Steph Curry play. I'm never rooting for a Steph injury. But if Steph goes down for any period of time, that team is decimated, just decimated. Because Draymond Green's going to quit too when Steph is not playing. So I'm in belief with you. I think the Warriors are going to be the worst team in the Pacific, but I also don't think the worst team in the Pacific is going to be super far behind the rest. They'll just be maybe a few games behind them. That's how I expect this division to go.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And you're right about the Steph thing. If they don't have Steph, I really don't know what they can do.
So we'll have to see how this Pacific Division goes. For all your Clippers coverage and following the Clippers this year, check out Dime Dropper over on the Locked On Clippers podcast. For all your Kings fix, check out Locked On Kings with myself, Matt George. The Kings and Clippers always tend to give us some awesome games, so hopefully we get more of that this season and now inside the Intuit Dome. So I'm looking forward to this season, my guy. Best of luck this year, and I'm sure this won't be the last time we're chatting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.